Just let me know when you're ready to go, Ryan.
It should be any moment now.
Are there more people in the room?
It says recording live now, it says.
Yep.
It does show that, so, okay. All right, we're live, so I will start my intro all over again and just say welcome. Thanks to everybody. Hi, Sheila, can you hear us now?
Good. I can hear you now.
Good, thank you. Thanks for sending us that note. And great to see everybody. It's hard to believe we are now just short of Halloween, and we're still doing this. I suspect we're going to be doing it for a little while. But thanks for attending today. We've got not a long schedule, not a detailed agenda today, but we've got a couple of important items to discuss. Most of it will come during the in-camera, but we do have a couple of formal things we have to do in terms of minutes approval, etc. So we'll cover that as well. I guess just before I officially open the meeting, just for the board's benefit, just say that the executive has remained in touch with Taylor, and staff's continuing to work away both with our client base and with our colleagues in the different city agencies to stay up to date on what's been happening in the market relative to COVID procedures and guidelines. Obviously, we've had some changes in the health and safety openings, which has, created a bit more of a challenge for the downtown core. But, fingers crossed, hopefully we'll see some opening up before the Christmas holidays. So I just want to say thanks again to the staff team for continuing to work away under challenging circumstances. And I'm just looking at the roll call. I see a number of people are on. Taylor, looks like we do have a quorum, so that's great. I'm just going to see if there's anybody that cannot hear me right now. I just ask you to either put your hand up or send us a chat. Use the chat box on the bottom, but I'm assuming if I haven't seen that everyone is connected, which is great. Just a reminder that as a public meeting, the meeting was posted on the city and the YDS websites and is being now broadcast and recorded on YouTube. So I'd officially like to call the meeting to order and confirm that we have a quorum. Before we get started, are there any other items to add to the agenda? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Just a quick update on some documents that were distributed this week. Jan sent out a package yesterday with an overview, and she will be discussing that in the in-camera session. And I just sent an update this morning with the in-camera minutes. I apologize for the lateness, but the September 17th in-camera minutes, which we will be reviewing and approving today, are in-camera minutes from June 18th. They're somewhere in cyberspace, but between our board secretary and myself, we will be tracking them down, and we will be reviewing and approving them at our December 10th meeting. So I'm sure that will keep you all up awake at night, wondering what's in those minutes, but I can tell you there's nothing contentious, but we will review and approve them at our next meeting. So I apologize for those not being sent out. I guess a welcome to the guests. I'm just doing a quick roll call here. We've got Robin from Councillor Wong Tam's office. Some of our agency partners, Pat's here. Matt Moyer will be joining us a little later. He's got a busy schedule, but he will be joining us for a particular section of the agenda. Kevin Lee was going to join us today, as is Allison Fowles from City Legal. I can't see if they're on, but I know they were planning to join us.
Yes, they are.
Okay, Antonella could not. I don't know if Mike Major's on the phone yet either. Can you, do you see if Mike's on?
I don't see Mike Major. Antonella has sent her regrets.
Yes, okay, fair enough. So I think that covers everyone that's not on the board. And of course, our master minute taker, Liz, is with us as well today. So Liz, if you have any challenges, please either put your hand up or put up a smiley face. There you go. How's your back? How are you? You're doing it sitting up, not lying down. That's a good thing. I'm assuming your back's a little better.
It's a lot better, actually.
Good.
Thank you for asking.
We will try and keep it light so that you don't have any added pressure. And if we're going too fast, just let us know. Okay.
I will stop you.
Okay. Thanks, Liz. And just before we get started on our Aboriginal land acknowledgement, are there any other items that anybody wants to add to the agenda, and or are there any conflicts of interest that anyone wants to state right now? No? Okay. Thank you. So I will move to our Aboriginal land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the land we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. So that covers our first agenda item. We'll move to agenda item number 2, which is confirmation of the regular minutes of the board on September 17th, 2020. As I mentioned, the in-camera minutes from June 18th will be deferred, and the in-camera minutes of September 17th, 2020 that I sent this morning will also be approved. So maybe what I'll do first is just ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting of September the 17th. Could I have someone make that motion? Hands up. Don't all jump at once.
Yeah.
Oh, Ian, thank you. Ian, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And a seconder for that?
Bob?
Thank you, Bob. That's great. Could I ask for, is there any discussion of the minutes anyone would like to ask or inquire? No? Okay. So could I have a vote for approval? You can just put up the hand on yours if you'd like. Oh, Sheila, that's good. You said in favor. You can use the chat box. There's the thumbs up. That's great. Any abstentions or opposition? Thumbs down? No, thank you. That's great. So approved. I will now move to the in-camera minutes from September 17th. Now, in fairness, they were sent out late. So does anyone have any questions, or are there any items that you'd like us to read if you didn't have a chance to read them? Understanding they're in camera, but I don't believe there was we had a security update. We had an event summary from Natalie, and then obviously we had a follow-on. Second half of that meeting was our HR discussion that Jan reviewed, an update on the recruitment plan. But unless you have any questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve the in-camera minutes from September 17th. Could I have someone to make a motion on that?
Move, Jen Mollenhauer.
Thank you, Jan. Can I have a second for that?
Stefania can.
Thank you, Stefania. Any discussion? Okay, in favor? Thank you. Any opposition or abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. Approved. All right, we're now going to move to our financial report. So I can tell you that in terms of the financials, there has not been a lot of change in terms of the city's position. Obviously, they're continuing to fund us. The staff is continuing to provide monthly updates, and Taylor and Sue have been in regular contact with our treasurer. Good morning, Jeremy. Nice to see you. So we've been having regular contact there, just discussing the month-to-month budget and the forecast through the end of the year. The other thing that we can talk to this morning that's not officially on the agenda is the 2021 budget planning process. So what I'll do at this point, before Taylor provides a report, I'll just turn it over to the treasurer and just see if, Jeremy, if you have any comments on our monthly financials, the budget planning process, or policies, which I know we're working through as well.
Thank you, Mike. The budget discussion we're going to have is not the traditional budget discussion we have. This is just a kind of preempt, just to ensure that everybody's a part of the process and aware of the assumptions and the risks that Taylor and his team is investigating and resolving as we move through the steps. We've have Taylor here to kind of broach some of the subjects, but this is probably your opportunity, just because of the tight timelines and scheduling of the city. There might not be another discussion about this, and so we wanted to make sure we get this on the table and on the agenda as early as possible. Go ahead, Taylor.
Right. Thank you, Jeremy. So I had included a little note about the budget process in the general manager's report. the situation we're in right now is the city has not identified a critical path for the budget process for 2021. So no deadlines have been established, no meetings for the city and for council have been established or for budget committee. So this is a bit of a different situation than the board was in last year, where there was a sense of urgency about the board approving the budget before it went to council. Council has not scheduled any kind of deliberations on the budget. So the work on the budget for Yonge-Dundas Square remains in process. What I can reassure the board about, though, is that the work that staff are doing and have done is about charting a path to recovery from the COVID pandemic. So that includes work on the sponsorship file to rebuild the value proposition for a potential sponsor. It includes a return to us hosting events next year to some degree. It includes us returning to producing our own programming, which is part of the expectations that council have us as a city agency. And it includes incremental growth back to where we're at. I think that you know, as everyone is probably aware, I'm finishing my time with the board at the end of this year. So there's going to be an opportunity for the board to reconsider, in light of COVID-19, its business planning and the goals and objectives that are inherent in that plan. And I think that'll be a good thing for the new general manager to work on with the board. But the work that's being done on the budget right now is specifically about creating a path to success for the board that's reasonable, considering the challenges that we're facing with the pandemic and the inherent uncertainty that's involved with that. So I'd like to reassure the board that there will be a formal budget presentation that will happen for the board, and that there will be an opportunity for the board to review the budget proposal in detail. But those are the overarching kind of circumstances that staff have been discussing and dealing with right now. I can also reassure the board that because of my my departure that's happening at the end of this year, there has been a very collaborative approach with the management team. Everyone's been involved. So there aren't any gaps in the understanding of what will be included in the budget. And there should be a level of confidence that the board should have about staff's ability to deliver this process, to be collaborative and consultative with the board, and not to be concerned about manage the status of the management team during this process. So I guess with that, perhaps we should move to the financial statements for the month of September.
Yep.
Number 3A in your board package. As far as activity goes, it's a very simple kind of report for the month of September, again, due to the COVID-19 situation. The big difference that the board will notice from previous financial statements, say from the August financial statements, is that we have clearly hit a second wave in the pandemic. And that has meant that the outlook to year end has been adjusted accordingly. The applications that we had for events that were in discussion for this time of year and for November we have not been able to move forward with due to the phase 2 reimplementation of lockdown. The only activity that we've really been fortunate enough to engage in on the square has been some feature film shooting, and that we have had some of that already, and that is taken into consideration in the revised forecast to year end.
Taylor,
Yeah.
just a quick question. Now, Jeremy might want to talk to this, and maybe just, you know, because the feature film shooting is good news and that there was some activity. Maybe for the benefit of the board, you could just talk to how we price it right now relative to what the city does, because I know that, you know, the city has a department that, you know, manages and promotes film shooting. How we price it, how we, I don't know, maybe Natalie can talk to this, you know, what our strategy is on an annual basis. Do we actively go to studios? Do they come to us? I'm just thinking as we review our current financial model, you know, this could be a short-term, maybe bigger opportunity for us because we're wide open and we have the space, and it's one of those few things that can happen when guidelines allow it. So, you know, have you discussed it as a team to say, hey, maybe we should be going out to all the studios now to promote it in a bigger, better way, because for the next 3 to 6 months, this might be one of our best opportunities. So maybe a bit of history and then maybe a bit of where we are and where we could go.
Including the fee structure, I would defer to the manager of events for that.
Okay, hi. The fee structure is the exact same as it is for the event industry. There aren't many changes unless it's a small a photo shoot, for example. We have a photography permit fee that is $150 an hour, and because the way in which videography has changed over the years and the equipment that's used for that, sometimes there will be, you know, a smaller photo shoot that's similar to or filming that's similar to a photo shoot. Often we will move forward with, you know, the photography rate for the very small, you know, 2-3 people, not big budget, the not a lot of equipment, not utilizing a lot of space, and only there for like maybe 2 to 3 hours. If it's something larger, then it's a typical permit with the same staffing rates that apply, and that's been consistent over all of the years. There hasn't been a difference in terms of fees that have been set out. In terms of how we engage with them, the larger shoots, like what we had on the square last week overnight, typically it depends on what kind of location they're looking for. They have location scouts that go around the city, and you know they have a look at the locations and make sure that they're a fit for what they want to do. But it typically depends on what the scene calls for and what the script calls for. We haven't actively gone out and engaged with them because, similar to the event, it hasn't been something that we've actively engaged in as a service provider. But that doesn't mean that we can't, you know, put together a deck of sorts like we have for the event industry, and distribute that to the film industry as well. If we want to look at adjusting our fees specific to filming, that's something we can certainly talk about as well.
Yeah, I just, again, you know, with us not being as close to it, I think, you know, I know that the approach has been that we'll try to be as open-minded in terms of looking at all opportunities. But, you know, if our short to medium term prognosis is going to be, you know, up and down in terms of access by the public, you know, maybe this is a strategy that we should be considering in a bigger way in terms of going out to commercial studios, you know, the talent scouts that you know do site location checks, maybe even some of the agencies, you know, the ad agencies and stuff in terms of their commercial shoots. So just a thought to think about.
Yeah, I would add, Mr. Chair, that I think that because of the uniqueness of Yonge-Dundas Square, the requests for filming that we see are very location specific, and people are looking for the kind of environment that only we can provide. So we are kind of a specialty location. I would also advise that Natalie is going to talk to the board a little bit further about the next several months during the general manager's report, and some requests that staff have developed to try and kickstart the recovery process over the winter time, and we'll elaborate on that later on in the meeting.
Okay.
If I can go back to the
question about the statement, the current statement, when the time is right.
Yeah.
I've got a question. I've got a kind of comment too.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
So last week, Taylor and I spoke about the film rates, and just maybe I don't know when the timing is right, but just look at an assessment of how much we're charging these distributors or ad agencies, because the standard rate that we're charging events may or may not be in line with what the city charges, you know, TV studios or distributors. And so we just want to ensure that, you know, we're not misaligned with that price. And I don't know what the sequence of how often the city increases their rates. But that's one opportunity. Taylor, I wanted to kind of step back on the budget planning assumptions, and maybe if you can talk a little bit more about the risks of the planning process that your team kind of looked at. What was some of the risk, and what were some of the opportunities?
Well, that's an interesting question, Jeremy. I'd say that the pandemic itself, when it presented itself, seemed like the biggest, obviously the biggest overarching threat that we were experiencing. But I think, as is the case with many different industries and many different situations, people have pivoted their thought process a little bit and are now seeing, as we're moving through the situation, that we're seeing opportunities that we weren't thinking about earlier on when we were in the beginning stages of this crisis. So I think for the board, it's especially with a change in the management team coming imminently, that this is an opportunity for the board to, while we're in this re-emerging kind of process, to look at different options, including taking a look at the existing business plan and seeing how the business plan perhaps should be adapted in coming months and years. And I think that's an opportunity that we're looking at right now. As far as the threats go, I think that the concerns that we have are obviously about ongoing uncertainty. And you know, I guess what I should say about that is that if there are concerns about the finances, that we are you know, an agency of the City of Toronto. So our financial liabilities remain the city's financial liabilities. There is an ongoing need for during the pandemic for the city to support us as a municipally owned facility and to deliver the programs that are expected under the relationship framework document. That said, I think the overarching concern will be the city's own financial uncertainties as we head forward. I know that there's a gap that the city needs to close for 2020 because the city isn't allowed to, unlike other levels of government, cities are not permitted to run deficits. So that's going to be a huge issue. And I know that there's been an announced financial gap for 2021 of, I believe, 1.6 billion. So how that will trickle down and how that will affect Yonge-Dundas Square and the board and the financial assistance that we've been relying upon from the city, I think remains to be seen. And I think that—
But I guess that would be the committee from the
that situation is still unfolding. As I said earlier, the city has, I think, due to these uncertainties, has not announced a process for the 2021 budget yet. So there is some confidence that I and the staff have that when they do announce this process, that the board will still have time to consider the budget in as much detail as would be as is considered necessary. And I can also tell you that because of the amount of uncertainty, I have spoken with other colleagues of mine who manage city agencies or the finances of city agencies, and you know, I can assure you that this is this ongoing sense of uncertainty and waiting for clarity and a critical path is something that everyone is dealing with. We are not behind schedule as far as the overarching process goes, and you know, I want to reassure the board that when the city does create a critical path and announce its budget process, including when budgets will require approval by boards, and when the city will be moving forward with that process, that staff will share that with the board immediately. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
I did want to point out to members about the financial statements for September that financial mitigation efforts remain in place by staff. There are a few lines of expenses in the budget that in the statement that have been highlighted, and those are specific areas where we may have spent more money than we had anticipated we were going to, or where specific COVID-19 expenses were being incurred. In situations such as that, such as where the board has, for example, reopened the public washrooms on the P1 level of Yonge-Dundas Square. Those are being done under pandemic-related conditions, and there are security and cleaning costs that are involved in keeping the patrons of the washroom safe. The city has agreed to cover these additional costs as well to ensure that we're able to provide this amenity to the public. So there's a few lines in the financial statements about that. There's also a highlight where we have also exceeded what we thought we were going to spend, and that's related to board expenses in the HR matter that's coming to the board later on. But those are aside from that, I think that what members would find is that overall, we have done as much as we can to mitigate our costs, and that staff have deferred any kind of activities or maintenance issues that aren't urgent, and that as we made this decision way back when, all of our programming has been suspended indefinitely, but the city has been, I would say I would thank them for being very proactive with its agencies, and I know that when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of concern from not just from myself, but all the other small city agencies that relied on their own activities for revenue and didn't know how they were going to bridge that gap, that financial gap, and the city has been very good at remaining in constant contact with staff, and there are no overarching concerns at this moment in time about our financial viability. I think you'll note that that our accounts payable are all fairly up to date, and we have no outstanding issues with vendors at this point in time. I think Jan said she had a question.
I did, Mr. Chair, is that?
Yep, go ahead.
It's I may be misreading it, or just it's more a curiosity question, Taylor. In terms of the to-go picture, a year to go for event permit and event support, relative to what we've actualized to the end of September, that number seems on a relative basis to be quite high. It's not an absolute, but I wasn't sure what was behind that sort of step up in the last quarter.
Are you referring, sorry, can you click, Jan, are you referring to
event support and event permit revenue? It says the forecast is 25,000 and 50,000, right, and year to date we have 11,000 and 10,000 respectively. Right.
So as you'll note, we had a much higher projection last month before we returned back to stage 2 of the pandemic. These amounts are confirmed revenues that are coming to us from the film industry and from filming that's taking place on the square.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
That's that one area where we still have some activity going on. Thank God.
I just didn't connect that. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Mr. Chair, it's Stefania. I have a question.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Obviously, lots of support from the city. If I'm reading this right, it looks like the forecast for the year is about 1.6 million, but there's still a net loss of about 130,000 for the year. Can someone just advise sort of where that loss goes in a year like this?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that question. So unlike a not-for-profit organization or a charitable organization, as an agency of the city, any surplus that we managed to accumulate over the course of a year, the surplus goes back to the city unless we had planned for a contribution to the reserve fund, which we have, but we haven't managed to accumulate anything as of yet. If the board incurs a deficit, as we did, we had a small deficit last year, the city covers that amount for us. So again, there's no ongoing financial liability or concern as an agency of the city.
Is there, just to follow up, is there a reason functionally that loss isn't tied up into the City of Toronto line for a balanced budget? I know that in a typical year, I don't think we see that City of Toronto line, and then it works a bit differently. But in a year like this, where there is a City of Toronto contribution, I just wonder why the variance.
I'm not sure I understand your question completely, so I apologize for that.
That's okay, I'll rephrase it.
Yeah.
So this budget shows that the City of Toronto is contributing in sort of column 4, the forecast.
Yep.
The City of Toronto is contributing $1.6 million rounded. But it also shows a net loss of about $130,000, which the city will ultimately also be contributing. So I'm just wondering why this contribution isn't closer to 1.73 and the bottom line isn't 0.
Okay, I understand your question now. Thank you. The reasoning for that is because the financial relationship with the city is being monitored week to week, and the city's contributions month to month towards the board's operations are based on our cash flow needs and so it's specific to that. So I think that what you're seeing here is an estimate of what our cash flow needs will be and what the variance will be at year end. I don't think that it's reasonable for us to we would never budget for the city to this. It would be after the audit process and after the books are closed that there would be a deficit that would be confirmed in the audit process, and then the city would issue that amount to the board later on next year. So it would be an accounts receivable
Thank you.
at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I think it's just a question. I think to your point, Taylor, I think it's a question of year to date versus year end, and how the city's going to reconcile. I mean, the numbers are there. We can see what the accumulated deficit is, and more importantly, what the proposed additional deficit's going to be. So don't know who that is. Or sorry, I'm just looking at it. There's a question here from Liz. So yeah, I think you're right, Taylor. I think everything will get reconciled. Obviously, you're going to need to have some guidance from City Financial in terms of how that's reconciled. But I think what you're saying at this point is, as we've done in previous years, if there's a deficit, it's covered by the city, and if it's a surplus, it goes into general revenue as a contribution that we make.
Correct.
And we're just, we're evaluating and revising the budget as we go on a month-to-month basis based on what guidelines you've been given.
Right. So it's a difference between cash flow and projected deficit.
Yes. Okay.
Largely a question of timing.
Yeah, that's right. I think so. Just before we continue and finish up this agenda item, just got a question from Liz. There's someone identified here as iPad without a number or name. Could you just let us know who that is? I'll just restate that. I don't know if everyone heard me. There's somebody that's just listed on the screen as iPad. Ryan or Taylor, I don't know if you know who that is based on the roll call you've done, but if you...
Hi, it's
Allison?
Allison Fells from City Legal. It could be me. I show up with my name on my end of things, but I am on an iPad.
No, Allison, it's not
believe
you.
it's you.
Okay.
It's not you. You've been in here longer than this individual.
All right.
I had also asked them via the chat privately who they were, and I haven't gotten a response yet. They're muted at the moment, and they have to unmute themselves to speak. I've asked that they unmute themselves.
Okay.
I can
Brian,
have
maybe
them
what you-
leave. I can push them out of the meeting at the moment. And if it's,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. And if they want to dial back in, then they'll have to identify themselves unless, you know, we give it, yeah, but I think that's probably fair. I mean, maybe you can do the check on the roll call again in terms of who you've confirmed that's attending, maybe by process of elimination. But I think, yeah, unless we know who that person is, understanding it.
the only person it could be that I know that would be joining from an iPad would be Matt Moyer,
Right.
who may be in and just not focused on the conversation right now.
Right.
So I'll move this individual to the waiting room, and
Yes.
And we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you.
And I see that Jeremy, Mike has a question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Ryan. Quick question, Taylor, I had for you about you know, our footprint in the kind of COVID recovery phase for the city. I know the city is got a number of agreements with a number of hotels in your area, and I wanted to know if you've seen any kind of change in activity, or if you've heard about new agreements when the city is opening up their warming centers or respite sites in your kind of locale.
I think I would defer to the manager of operations on this question, as he's been attending neighborhood-specific meetings on the board's behalf, especially as it relates to the Bond Hotel. There may be some elements of this discussion that may lead us to a discussion about security of the board's property, and that is scheduled for an in-camera discussion. But I think for the general situation, I would ask Ryan to speak to that.
Thank you, Taylor. So Jeremy, to answer your first part of your question, aside from the opening of the Bond Hotel as an emergency shelter, I have not heard of additional locations opening as of yet. I don't know if Robin from the councillor's office might have more information there. We have seen a change in activity in the area, and I think it'd be best that we address that in camera.
Thank you.
Robin from the councillor's office here. The city did approve its Toronto winter plan at city council yesterday.
Oh.
It does include the opening of new spaces. However, none of the ones that are listed are in the downtown area, as far as we're aware. We do know that about 12 individuals who had been staying at the Margaret's Respite farther east along Dundas, that program is shuttering and they are being moved to the Bond, but that is the only specific move that we know of right now. The Out of the Cold program that generally operates during the winter for COVID related reasons can't operate that way. So they are going to be using the Bond Hotel sort of as a replacement for the Out of the Cold, but that won't change the total number of rooms or people that have been identified for staying there. So at this point, the city has said that there's a capacity of about 200 people staying at the Bond. That's not changing at this point.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'll just, for everyone, the iPad who I'll admit back in is Matt Moyer.
So he's working undercover is what you're saying.
Thank you.
There you go. That's good. It's good that we've got good surveillance. Thank you, Robin, for that. Thanks for that input, Robin. That's helpful, and Ryan as well. So if there are no other questions around either the September financials or the budget planning process, maybe what we'll do is move to approve the financial report. Can I ask for a motion to approve the September financials?
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. And
Seconded.
seconded by
Nick.
Is that Nick? Thanks, Nick.
Yep. No problem.
Okay. Any further discussion? Well, that was a very good discussion that we did have. Okay. Thank you. All in favor? Thumbs up. Hands up. Thank you. Any opposed or abstained? None. Thank you. Okay. Good discussion. Thank you for your questions. It's an interesting time to be discussing numbers, as we all know, but you know, I think it's fair to ask around both our year-to-date as well as our go-forward plan in terms of where we go. So at this point, we're into the general manager's report. Taylor, I don't know how much of this was provided as information and what you want to talk to, but I'll turn it over to you at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I will speak to the general manager's report in general, and then I'm going to pass it off for some further clarification to the manager of events. One of the things that I think is important for the board to understand is a part of the general manager's report is under pending reports. So I covered the upcoming budget presentation, which is now being scheduled for just the December meeting of the board. I also want to reassure the board that they have probably heard over the course of quite a while now that there's a procedural bylaw that needs to be approved by the board that will replace the board's the old Yonge-Dundas Square Board Constitution. I'm doing some work on that file with the city manager's office. The city clerk has been assisting, and city legal has been working with us as well. There was a draft that was presented to me for discussion pre-pandemic, but some things have changed since then, including the board's ability to meet electronically. And there have been some changes to the City of Toronto Act. So there's a little bit of housekeeping that needs to be done on that file before it can be presented to the board for approval. I would suggest, though, that in between now and when it comes to the board, there will be an opportunity for review of the draft procedural bylaw. So I would ask that any board members who would like to, and they are very welcome to do so, to join that process, that review process, to let me know. And it doesn't have to happen right now, but it can happen in the coming days. If you want to participate in the review of the draft before it goes to the board at the December 10th meeting, please identify yourself with me and we will do that.
Taylor, I'm happy to participate in that process if you'd like.
Thank you, Nick. That's wonderful.
I would as well. Thank you. If you,
Just waiting. They're just going to send me a message right now.
Taylor, I would like to as well if you need any.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Nick, for putting your name
But it's right where the emblem is.
Someone is talking. He should be on mute. I don't know if
that's iPad.
I think that there was nothing confidential, fortunately. So Jan and Nick, thank you for putting yourself forward to help with the review of that. Anybody else that would like to participate in that?
Just a quick question, Mr. Chair, if I may. Yeah. Taylor, knowing that we've already put ourselves forward, but what is the procedure? Like if we identify any potential issues for the board, is there a mechanism to push forward amendments or provide feedback to the city?
That's a good question. Kevin Lee from the city manager's office is present with us. I don't know if Kevin could respond to that. I think there is some room for just discussion, obviously, and the board does have to approve the bylaw before it goes to council for approval. But that said, much of what's going into the procedural bylaw is to make sure that we're aligned with existing legislation. So I think much of it is not up for discussion. But I would ask Kevin Lee if he could comment on that further.
Sure, Taylor. Just to be clear, the bylaw is the board's procedural bylaw. So it is, you have authority to change or amend what you will be looking at. our job is to just make sure that it is in keeping with council decisions and it reflects those decisions and any other sort of legislative provisions. So it is the board's bylaw. It does go to council for approval, but we are engaged. We'll flag anything that would be, an issue, and it's required under the City of Toronto Act to go to council for approval. So what you would be looking at, what we've sort of helped draft, is reflecting some of our work with, and our experience with other boards as well, and bringing that experience to Yonge-Dundas Square and the draft there. So it's a draft. If there are pieces there that you think need to be changed or amend, that's completely up to you. We'll ensure that it's still in keeping with whatever requirements are needed, so that when it does go to council for approval, for final approval, that it is compliant with anything that's required.
Kevin, it's Mike here. Quick question, maybe just for context, maybe you could just give the board a sense of, how much updating was required. Was it really out of date or was it more tweaking?
There wasn't a lot to work with the first time.
You're being very honest, and that's why I wanted you to provide that context.
Yeah. So we've provided you with an example, building on an example. So it does draw from your existing constitution, which would not be required after this procedural bylaw is passed.
Okay.
But it does, it is something that we've used a bit of a template from other agencies to develop the draft that you'll be looking at.
Right. And is there a time frame that you normally would recommend that the board reviews, like every 3 to 5 years kind of thing?
I think that's always a good idea to review, but there's no requirement to review it once it's in place. The only requirement is that it's approved by council and that you do have one in place.
Right.
So I think, generally with policy, I think it's a good idea to review periodically, 3 or 4 years.
Sorry. Yeah. Or is it maybe something we should do around the, the term of the board term, chair term, council term? I mean, I don't know if we want to try and align with any of those, or whether that's just, that's just good timing.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think this is one of those things that in the past has tended to fall off the agenda as the board composition has changed due to council appointments. And Kevin was very circumspect in his description of the situation, but that may be part of the reason why there was so little to work with to begin with.
Right. Yeah.
So it may be prudent for once Taylor leaves us, for the incoming executive director to just have a flag on the file that once this process is complete, 3 to 5 years later we should be revisiting it, and just to bring that up for the board's consideration.
Right. Okay.
So to that end, Mr. Chair, if I may ask just a clarifying question. The inference from Taylor, your report, is that you're going to be bringing forward something for board approval in December. That seems on the surface rushed, particularly in light of the comment that Nick just made in terms of incoming leadership. Is that something that is mandated by the city, that it needs to be completed by the fiscal year end, or is there some liberty for the board to extend this 1 or 2 board meetings out?
I would defer to Kevin on that question.
Jan, there's no mandate by the city. I mean, you should have one in place now, I guess. It's past due, I would say. And one is more robust, I guess, than what you have in place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is past due. I think at this point, if the board needs more time to consider it, that makes some. I understand that piece, but just thinking about Taylor's time left with YDS, and thinking about his sort of experience
Absolutely. No question. Yeah.
You may want to land this before there's a transition. That's all.
All right. Thank you for that, good counsel. Appreciate it, Kevin.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that, Kevin. That's very helpful. And yeah, I just want to say thanks to Kevin and the team, because this is a lot, stuff that's been going on behind the scenes. Obviously, Kevin's had other things on his plate, not just our items. So we appreciate Kevin and his team assisting. And it's funny how a lot of these things that really are important and are fundamental to how we do business can be lost and left. And we all know that this has been a unusual cycle that we've been through over the last 2 years in terms of board terms and city council, adjustments and what the city staff have had to do. So I think it's important, especially given this is a year we're in a transition with our management team, that we try and get as much of our, important policies and procedures up to date. So we're kind of not starting from scratch, but at least we're level set in terms of moving forward in 2021. So thanks for that, Kevin.
Mr. Chair,
yeah.
Just a quick question. This constitution, how many policies are included in it?
Kevin or Taylor, do you want to talk to that?
It's not a document that includes policies. It's the existing constitution is a framework for how the board operates and how it conducts meetings and how it reports, how it manages its business affairs. So that was created when the board was first formed back in 2001.
5, 6?
Yeah.
Or was it that long ago?
I came to work for the board in 2005.
Right.
So the Constitution was a document that was created by the board itself way back when the board was formed, and it's basically it's an overview of how the board manages its affairs. It's not a document that has specific policies attached to it or contained within it, but it's maybe, am I saying that right, Kevin, or am I fumbling through that?
I think that's accurate. It's a bit of an overview. It has pieces of your procedure, but it also has pieces that are included in the relationship framework and the municipal code. So it's a bit of a catch-all. So I don't know. I mean, there are pieces of policies, I guess, Jeremy, in it, but it's not a wholesome sort of policy.
Yes, like if I may, by great irony, this was in my folder for something else. I'm not trying. I just happened to have it in my hands. It's speaks to our role from a governance perspective, the composition of the board, procedural guidelines, how we conduct business, etc. So it's more of a constitutional type document in terms of our purview with respect to in relationship with the city.
Okay, thank you. Then, yeah, based on that, I don't know how we could get it through in one meeting. It's probably something that after your task team works on it, it comes to the board, and then it probably has to go back to the governance lawyer, right? Is that what we're looking at? And then coming back to the board?
I anticipate that any considerations that have to be done with city legal will happen in advance of the draft being shared with members. As I said, I've been consulting with legal, the city manager's office, and the city clerk's office already. So I think that any kind of legal questions should be resolved before that. But I noticed that Allison just turned her camera on. So if you have something to add to that.
Yeah. So I just add a couple of comments. I will be closely involved with Kevin and also city clerks. City clerks is involved in drafting board bylaws. I just want to say there shouldn't be any surprises in the draft coming forward. However, I mean, the board is of course free to make changes and ask for revisions, but the constitution of the board currently says that the board follows council procedures, and the bylaw that will come forward will essentially be in line with those procedures. It won't be the same, obviously. It'll be appropriate to a board and its functioning, but the principles are the same.
And Taylor's correct. It is dated December the 6th, 2001. So it seems appropriate that there is a sense of urgency on that.
Okay. All right. So listen, thanks, Kevin. Thank you and thanks for the questions from the board as well. I think at this point, Taylor, is there anything else in your report or is there anything else you would like to address to the board?
Yes, there's one action item for the board to consider,
okay,
which is about pandemic event booking procedures.
Right.
It's a discussion that the management team have been having recently, and I will ask the manager of events to briefly walk the board through that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Taylor. So this is something that the board had a brief discussion about at its meeting on September 17th. The importance of maintaining an active and engaging square in light of COVID-19 related challenges. So there are a number of issues to consider. The fact that pandemics are inherently anti-urban and drive people away from the city center into, more remote locations or remaining in their house. And the fact that outdoor public space is really critical to the vitality of the community in general at the best of times, but particularly during pandemics this pandemic or any pandemic really, the fact that people, may not have a yard or a balcony to be outdoors and not have, the ability to socialize. So their ability to be outdoors specifically is limited, and the importance of outdoor public space to those individuals specifically, but to the general public as well. I believe that the larger community needs confidence to come back downtown, and based on our mission and our mandates, we have a responsibility to ensure that the vitality of the downtown core, the intersection, the neighborhood is enhanced and lively and energetic as much as possible. Obviously, that's really challenging at this time currently. But looking ahead to the 2021 season, we're trying to come up with ways to make the square engaging, to create a space that people want to come and be part of and be outdoors. But also understanding that there are financial challenges both on our part and on the part of our clients and anybody wanting to engage with the square in an activation of any sort, whether it's community groups, commercial groups, arts and cultural organizations. So in an effort to create a lively square, to meet our mandates, to remain in line with our mission, to improve our sponsor value proposition, as an active square has little value to potential sponsors, and also to drive some economic development in the neighborhood. What I've proposed here is that we can adjust our permitting policies for the short term in an effort to build a stronger square and neighborhood experience. The other thing I want to note is that an active square, an engaging square, is typically a safe square as well. So there's also a safety aspect to this. It seems that creating engagement on the square only has positive impact to all involved. So staff have been busy trying to identify ways to rebuild the square's vitality by increasing the number of activations on the square, ensuring an animated square, and keeping in line with these missions and mandates. Trying to be resourceful in how we approach this, because as we just discussed, there's not a great deal of budget available to us right now in order to program the square. So we've been, having discussions with charitable partners, community-driven arts and cultural organizations, commercial and community clients that have activated the square previously, and looking to find ways to engage with them, partner with them, collaborate, and also leverage our digital signage in order to highlight and support our neighbors and build relationships. So what the recommendation here that we've developed is that for the first half of 2021, or for the next 6 months specifically, that the board authorize staff to adjust our permitting, our fees, our permitting policies and fees. And we would look to be waiving permit fees for those activations that aren't specifically commercial product promotions or launches, waiving rental fees for board-owned equipment, and supporting community and social justice-driven activations with free digital screen use. And staff would look to be, continuing our engagement with potential partners or collaborations that aren't necessarily financially driven, but that create opportunity on the square for all involved. That ends my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Natalie.
Thanks, Natalie. That was great.
Natalie, are you looking for a motion to that effect, or is this just a? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And I would ask if there are any questions around this. I have a comment that I'd like to make, but I would prefer actually if there's any, any comments, questions from the board first.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Sure.
My first question is, understanding that financial projection, as per the previous discussion, is really, we're really like playing pin the tail on the donkey in the dark. But what would you anticipate this does to the board's financial position for the first 6 months of 2021?
I would submit that the financial position currently, now that we're in stage 2, is and having received applications for 2021 and having received fewer applications for 2021 than we have previously ever received, I would submit that there may not be a lot of opportunity loss for us currently, and that while obviously the financial piece is a very important one, we have other mandates that we need to balance as well. And as long as we're able to do this in a way that doesn't cost the board money, that there may not be any loss felt as a result of trying to engage to keep the square active, as long as we're not out of pocket.
Yeah. If I could add to that, I would also suggest, though, that staff are extremely prepared to move forward as we find an opportunity and move hopefully back out of stage 2, and that we I really believe that the preparation that has been done by the team here means that we are in a position to be at the vanguard of safe outdoor events. And I think that's where we know that the initial events are going to take place are going to be outdoors and not indoors when the pandemic starts to ease. So part of the great thing about this suggestion that's coming from the management team is that it should allow us to, as we're moving towards recovery, to animate the square and demonstrate that it's a safe place to use. So that I think that by using the square, the square can actually be a tool to promote the square itself. So not only are we animating the space and keeping Yonge-Dundas safer, we're also using the square to promote use of the square specifically by the private sector, who will have the money and will be wanting to engage in commercial activities.
Yeah, I understand that there's a potential virtuous cycle here where, there's probably a little bit of a imagination gap, and people just don't even think about the square right now because of everything that's gone on. And as the square becomes more animated, more people will consider it for further, engagement. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much.
Imagination gap, I'm writing that down. Thank you, Nick.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Quick question about the rationale between kind of this recommendation for 6 months versus 3 months. Why, 6 months sounds like a long time to kind of make this mandate.
I don't know. Natalie, Taylor, do you want to address that? I have a thought on that, but maybe the staff does.
I would say that typically, well, there's two pieces to this. One is that it takes time to plan these activations, and the other is that it would give us some time to build the relationships that, you know, if that we have already been working on and having these discussions. But it's not like the organizations that we've been speaking with are prepared, you know, to just hit the ground running right now. They need to have an understanding of what our capabilities are, what we can support, how we can support them, how we can partner, and then, you know, talk about what the fees on the square would look like to them. And it may be that some of them will have to, you know, engage other groups to try and help support them financially through the activation. So I also think that, you know, typically our event calendar doesn't really take off until May. So this gives us time in our off season to try and engage the community on the square. I think that the following 3 months are typically quiet times to begin with. You know, December is kind of hit or miss depending on what's happening commercially on the square, but January through March is quite quiet. And I think that it's going to be more challenging to get people outside once the spring is upon us and the weather is warming. People will want to be outside, and if we have nothing on the square, then we've lost an opportunity to hit the mark on this. Taylor, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's pretty good. I mean, we did certainly when we were talking about this report going to the board, that was one of the things that I flagged, that there might be a request to look at the time frame involved. We can certainly report back to the board on, you know, how these discussions are going, but I do think that we need we do need staff needs a window that is what's the word I'm looking for, a window that's confirmed, so that we can engage people in meaningful discussions without having to say, well, we may be able to get this extended, we don't know. So I think Natalie is correct when she says that the potential financial impact of doing this in the off season is very small, but from a relationship building exercise and from a community safety standpoint, and from the standpoint of rebuilding the value proposition about what we have to offer our clients and a potential sponsor, I think anything that we can do to confirm that we are able to amend our procedures and our requirements in the short term with a very specified amount of time will be helpful going forward.
I'd also like to submit that there's nothing to say that we couldn't scale it back if things are picking up, but it seems to me more challenging to extend given the limited number of board meetings and how spaced out they are, but certainly would expect to be reporting back to the board at every meeting moving forward on the success of this program.
Right. Yeah, maybe just a couple of thoughts from my end. I think one, on the timing issue, I think, you know, stasis is our biggest problem here. It's trying to create momentum, and that's the biggest challenge, I think, in fairness to the staff and to Natalie's point. You know, potential clients out there are going to need a little bit of headway. They're going to need some, you know, direction from the staff team. So I think it's better to give them a little bit longer than try to do this in between each board meeting. We don't need to be micromanaging the potential. I 100% agree. I think, you know, we're in the bums and seats business. Every day the square is not active, we're not using it to its full potential. So I you know, I would encourage the staff just to look at all opportunities, whether it's, you know, not-for-profit groups, to Natalie's point, if you can activate and keep the square busy so that we're not losing money, any day that it's activated is better than you know, than an empty day. and certainly even going back to our conversation around film shoots and commercial shoots, I think we just have to be as creative as possible. So I'd be happy to support a minimum of 6 months. And to Natalie's point, you know, if things change and health guidelines open up and we can go back to charging, you know, our more regular permit fees, they'll do that. But I just don't think we want to limit the staff based on, you know, what's happening in between our board meetings. Plus, we have a transition with a new general manager. I think we need to keep the staff focused. So I would just say let's start with 6 months and see how it goes. And you know, as Natalie said, I know the staff team will report back on a meeting by meeting basis.
Although, Mr. Chair, if I may,
just to follow up before you move on. Sorry, Nick.
Go ahead.
So based on that logic, if we're planning for the year and we're planning kind of to use this as a kind of a carrot for new clients or clients that we have established relationships, how do you have these conversations to say that kind of this permit fee is waived for the first 6 months, but then the second 6 months it's not waived? It feels like if we're going to do something for, you know, a year or to kind of plan for the year, we would have it for the full year.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy, I can tell you how I'm running my business, which relies on a lot of live events, conferences. I basically said very simply to our clients and our members is there's a rate that's right now, and there's a rate that's 3 months from now, and there's a rate that when the guidelines change and we're back to whatever live looks like, that they'll change. And you have to work with us on that basis. I mean, I don't think it means we want to write, you know, a lot of more formal policies. I think we just have to say there's a now, and there's a phase 2, and there's a phase 1, and there's, you know, whatever. I mean, it just is what it is. What I'm hearing is that there's probably some new clients out there, some new organizations we may never have worked with who just didn't think to use a square because they didn't either have the budget or couldn't get the time. But we're a blank slate, so let's make it easy for people to consider it. And when we have to move back, we'll move back. You know, I mean, I think that's where we're at. I'm not worried that, you know, there's going to be a lot of people pushing back if we start wanting to charge fees if we're back to live events where the public can attend. I think we'll be okay for that.
If I may add, also, we do have an off-season permit rate that we issue annually, and it's from January 1st until March 22nd, where the permit fee is pretty well cut in half. So that this information is important for 2 reasons. One is there's less opportunity lost, and the second is that our clients or at least our returning clients they have experience with that changing fee structure. So and this is something that we did in, you know, September as well, where we offered a discount on extended use of the square. And so we did put out a communication. We can put out something similar to the one that we issued at that time as well.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a few questions, but I know Nick had his hand up before me as well. Nick, did you get your questions answered?
I think very similar to Jeremy, just I would very much support you guys trying to market this. If we're making a policy change, I think that's important to get that out there. The only other thing I'd say is any kind of new initiative like this, I understand we would all hope that within 3 months, everything kind of goes back to normal. I don't think that based on the past year, that is realistic. And so maybe I would say this is just my perspective, but I don't feel the need to get an update at every single board meeting. I understand we're having fewer of them than before, but maybe give the staff time to push forward on this initiative, take 3 months, see what you can do, and then come back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Vanya.
Thanks. So I just wanted to clarify one thing specific to the timeline. If things go just swimmingly over the next little while and everything, you know, the little fairy comes and there's pixie dust and everything's back to normal in a few months, understanding we've committed to certain clients in months 4, 5, and 6 on this rate, is it at our discretion to go back to normal rates, or are we locking ourselves into the 6 months?
I think that we can be prepared to move in either direction. If the board prefers that we move forward with that caveat, then that's something that we could do. But it might come back to bite us, so to speak, in terms of permitting something for later in that 6-month period. So if we have something in April, May, perhaps that might create some challenges down the road. But, you know, we're going to be focused on the first, like, of course, we know that, as Nick said, that it's not looking like this will be over in 3 months, but we want to focus on the winter specifically to begin with, because we want to get the square engaging. I mean, this has been a challenge regardless of pandemics, that keeping the square engaging over the cold months is challenging to begin with. So that would be where we will begin our focus on, and then move out into the spring. So it's possible that what we can do is engage in these discussions about the spring, but not commit to anything until, you know, 3 months from now or 2 months from now. And so we can start the discussion and say, it looks like we will be able to continue this amendment to policy, but we can't confirm it yet.
I'm not looking to sort of, for lack of a better word, like hamstring the staff. Was just looking for sort of what our flexibility is as circumstances change, understanding it, as has been said, it doesn't look like they will change significantly in that short term. So I'm comfortable moving forward with the 6 months. I do have a few other questions, if I may, about the specifics. Keen, obviously, to have incremental activity. Are we, just as a point of clarification on guidelines, are we empowered by the city to do away with theoretical revenue in such a significant way?
Oh, what's theoretical revenue?
Well, I mean, understanding we're not expecting the revenue with that, pardon me, the events that we are expecting to get through this, as Natalie has outlined, will be incremental. They're events that may not have happened otherwise. So we are doing away with revenue theoretically, in that we will no longer be charging for certain things, but that revenue is not likely to have been realized had we not made this policy. So I've just used it flippantly, but what I'm meaning to say is the city empowers us to make decisions about our permit fees and our processes. Does that include reducing things to zero?
So I would say there's two items to this. One is, you know, the fees that we're talking about. We're not talking about waiving hard costs. And those are still things that we mark up in our fee schedule. So if we need to have security and maintenance staff or audiovisual, that's still a cost that exists. What we're talking about is the access permit fees and things that are within our own inventory. So I think that the financial impact of that is really minimal. And I would also say that's, you know, you're correct when you say that the board is authorized to make these types of decisions. The kind of financial insight that the city has is far less, it's much higher level than this kind of discussion. Okay. So I don't think that there's in any way that we're deviating from our relationship framework. Or
that's what I would assume as well, but I thought it was worth clarifying.
Given completely it's within the board's purview.
It's not a, you know, COLA increase kind of thing.
Yeah.
Additional question, in the recommendation, there's a discussion of waiving permit fees for commercial product launches, promotions. Are there other types of commercial events that would receive this sort of gratis fees, or does that encompass all commercial activity?
Sorry, it was the commercial promotions as an exception to the waiving permit fees.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is, are there commercial bookings that are not these sort of product launches and promotions? And maybe you can give us some examples of the commercial events that would be permitted under this program.
Certainly. To use an example that's not necessarily COVID friendly, but as a commercial example of commercial activations on the square, many of our food related activations, Rib Fest, Burgermania, and some, there are a few festival type of events that are commercial in nature, but North by Northeast would be an example of that.
That's helpful. And this is sort of tangential, but I think it sort of fits in the same breath as this, but if it should be suited elsewhere in the meeting, then let me know. I'm wondering, as we think about things changing related to COVID-19, changing stages from most recently from 3 to a modified 2. Do we have language in our permits or contracts as it relates to protocol changing around public gathering, or are we protected if we need to postpone events? I mean, this is outside of this particular financial policy, but specific to booking events. And are we, presumably we're being clear and upfront about the realities of this when we're talking to clients?
Yes, we are. And this is something that came up in, March, April, when or I believe it was closer to April, when we did have to cancel some events that were permitted. It became a discussion at one of the board meetings, and the question was, are they going to cancel or are we going to cancel? And some of them did cancel, but for those that we had to say, no, we're in a stage here where we cannot support you activating the square, we did cancel. And I think Allison could probably speak to the legalities around it, but she was consulted, and it was considered, and I believe it was considered under an act of God in terms of canceling the contract, so that we weren't facing any potential legal situation or legal action. But certainly we are having those conversations with our clients. But in terms of language around specific to COVID in our contract, we do not have that, no.
No,
and is there,
but sorry, to clarify, we do not have specific COVID language, but we do have language about states of emergency, which covers COVID. So
okay.
Yes.
And is there language, whether in our permits or even in correspondence around, changing on the ground policies as they relate to safety protocol and that sort of thing?
We have a questionnaire that we're issuing to potential clients, for them to identify exactly what their safety plans and protocols will be. And we are not moving forward with clients that aren't able to.
Sure, but is it clear to those clients that safety protocol that's accurate today may not be accurate in March? As a like example that is I've pulled out of the air and is not recommended by anyone that I know. Today we have physical distancing of 2 meters recommended. In March, they decide it has to be 10 meters.
Right.
The plan they've given you today doesn't necessarily address that change in guideline.
No, it does not.
Is there a process or even just an acknowledgement that conversations are ongoing about what that plan needs to be as protocol changes?
We can certainly include something like that, and perhaps Allison can help us with the language around that.
I think that everything is just changing so much, and I think it's worth acknowledging even just that, guidelines change day to day sometimes.
Absolutely agree.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you. I know it was a lot.
Okay, thanks, Stefania. Yeah, look, I'm sure the
Sure,
staff.
I just had one quick question.
Sorry,
it's so hard when we're all online. First of all, it's wonderful to see the proactivity and trying to navigate and cope with the situation that we have at hand. I've just heard reference in this conversation to the next 6 months, and the document talks about the first half of 2021. So if you wouldn't mind clarifying what time frame we're being asked to consider, please.
Sorry, yes, it would be 6 months from now. It was loosely meant to just give a rough time frame with the first half of 2021, but yeah, I should have been more specific. It is from 6 months from now.
So that would be November 1st, or today's date, through to the end of April. Is that correct? Is that what because we're going to obviously put a motion forward. So that's the timing you're looking at?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. So good discussion. So you're looking for a motion. Do you have a motion in mind, Natalie, or do you want me to just wordsmith something here?
Sorry, I was muted. I did make a recommendation that I was hopeful could be used as the motion, but I'm not sure if you'd want to.
No, that's fine. Why don't you just propose it, and we can, if we need to change it, we can.
Okay, that the board authorize staff to modify current booking requirements during the ongoing pandemic to be reviewed by the board after 6 months. This would include waiving permit fees for the first half of 2021 for those This would include waiving permit fees for the following 6 months. For those activations that aren't specific to commercial product launches or promotions, waiving rental fees for board-owned equipment, supporting community and social justice-driven activations with free digital screen use, as well as engaging in collaborations or partnerships that will not, while not financially driven, create opportunity on the square to meet other square mandates. I realize that's long.
Okay, I'm not going to try and repeat that. There's a lot, so that's a long proposal. I think the only thing I would add there, and if we can slim that down a bit, that would be helpful. I think we should put specific dates in, Natalie. So whether it's today's date through the end of April or November 1st through the end of April, I think we should put specific dates in so that, you know, if it's a policy change, we should know that. It'll also help you or the staff team as you're talking to clients saying this is in place right now, but there are caveats based on what we're offering you. So what would your preference be? Would it be as of today, or would November 1st be fine, given that we're almost at the end of the month?
I would say November 1st through until April 30th.
Okay. So I could ask Natalie to reread that, but unless there's something in the wording that people did not agree with, the only revision I would recommend where we put those specific dates in of November 1st, 2020 to April 30th, 2021. And if in principle everyone's in agreement with that, then I would ask Natalie Taylor to, you know, have that put into the minutes.
Okay.
Is everyone comfortable with that? Okay. So thank you for that, Natalie. Can I ask somebody to propose that motion?
Nick will move.
I will not ask you to repeat it, Nick. I'll just ask you to propose it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, let me propose that as stated by Natalie with the
Okay, thank
amendment
you.
by the chair.
All right, and someone to second the motion? Thank you, Ian. I'm going to ask for discussion, but I'm hoping we've had the discussion. Okay, thank you. All in favor, thumbs up. Thank you. Any opposed or abstentions? All right, thank you. It's moved. Thank you. And Natalie and Taylor, thank you for bringing that forward. I think that's the kind of proactive, you know, approach we need to have. And I know it's a tough time when, as Stefania noted, you know, the ground rules are changing day to day, week to week. But I do think we just have to look at it as we've got 365 days of inventory, and every day we can fill where it's not costing us money is a good thing on behalf of the square and the city. So I think that's just the way that, you know, you need to approach it. And obviously, if things change or if you get a commercial opportunity that could preempt it and you can make that booking change without any loss, significant loss to the, you know, the customer client that you talk to who's not paying the full fees, then, you know, we would ask you to use your best judgment to do that as well. So thank you for that. That's a great job. I'm conscious of time here. I know we're at 10:30. But we still have our in camera, and we still have our HR discussion, which we want to have. So I want to make sure we have enough time. So Taylor, is there anything else in your report that we need to address?
No, that was the only action item, Mike.
Okay.
I expect a fulsome discussion of the in-camera items, however. So
okay. Could I just ask? I know you're going to do the minutes. Natalie, maybe if you and Taylor, or, you know, one of you could put that motion together with the wording, the revised wording we talked about. Perhaps send the motion to myself and to Andreas, and just let us have a quick look at it before you do the minutes, because I know the minutes will take a little bit longer with Liz. And then if we can approve the wording, then we could send that to Liz to put into the minutes, because I know it'll take her a bit of time to get that done. So can we do that first? And then just so we're not waiting on the full document. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question. Right now, I know things are changing and they're fluid, but you know, 6-7 months from now, the Olympics are supposed to happen. I don't know if there's, you know.
Can you get somebody from the Tokyo Olympic Committee on our next board call? We'll see what their plan is.
Yeah, I know Jan has connections with the you know, consortium.
Yeah. And I do as well. I know. Yeah, I know. We all. I think we both have some good contact. Are you thinking about them as an opportunity?
Yeah. I'm just thinking, if we're kind of, I know this is for 6 months, but if we, 7 months, we look at kind of waiving our permit fees and we're planning. I know we're not looking at social gatherings right now, but
displays or activations. Yeah, look, I think that's another good idea, and I would probably expand that, Jeremy, to say, like, even if we look at it now, think about the NBA, is proposing they may launch their season December 22nd, but the Raptors may or may not be playing in Toronto. NHL will be in the new year. There's a lot of things out there that would be sort of big festivals and events beyond our standard, a list of hundreds of potential clients. Maybe what we could suggest the staff team does, and this is a bit of blue skying, is to look at the calendar for the next 14, 15 months, just on big things, music festivals, entertainments, the TIFF. I mean, anything that's a big event, whether they've worked with us or not, that could use a big space, like the Olympics, Canadian Olympic Association or COC, I guess, anything like that. I think we should probably put that down as a blue sky and maybe create a go-to-market. You're planning for 2021. You may not know what your dates are, but if you're looking for a space, we're open for business. Call us, like something like that.
Very good.
I agree. I just think there's, the market out there. I don't think anything is off limits for us, given our location and what we have to offer. And we might be surprised by some of the, business groups, tourism boards. I mean, anybody who wants to talk to a big audience, I think could be a potential client. So anyway, good idea. Thank you for that. Okay, we're now into item number 5, which is our in-camera session. So let me just move to that part of the agenda. Give me 1 second. So unless there's anything else that we have to discuss before we go in camera, I would ask for a motion to move out of our regular board meeting before we move in camera. So can I have a motion to close our regular board meeting?
So moved, Stefania.
Thank you, Stefania.
Seconded, Nick.
Thank you, Stefania. Thank you, Nick. All in favor? Opposed, abstained? Thank you. All right, so at this point, just for point of clarification, Taylor, I'm never quite sure about this. I know the staff is going to be participating in the first 4 items. Do we have to move any of the guests to the waiting room at this point?
No, the guests have all been invited to the meeting.
Okay.
What we will do though is
public, if there's any public, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
and Ryan, is there anybody that is currently on that should not be on, or not? No, sorry, I didn't say that right. Are there any members of the public that would have to go to the waiting room?
No, not at this time, and I'll invite everyone to the in-camera room. You should see something come up on your screen shortly.
Okay.
Hold on 1 moment.
Okay, I think that we'll just see, wait till everyone comes back. We're also now back live. So Taylor, right now, thank you for rejoining us. We lost a couple of board members during just towards the end of our last, so we don't have quorum anymore. So I don't think we do anyway, Taylor. I'm just looking at here. I don't think we have quorum to formally. Let me just check here. We need 7, don't we, Taylor?
We need 6.
6?
A majority of the 11 voting members. So
Okay.
we have Jan, Ian, Jeremy, Bob, yourself, Andreas. You're good.
So we have 6. Okay, good.
Yes.
So I'll ask for a motion.
Andreas here. I've got a call scheduled for 2 minutes from now. Just FYI.
Can you just help us with the vote to go back into our regular meeting and then adjourn the meeting,
Yes.
and then we can talk offline. So I'll ask for a motion to resume our regular meeting. Thank you, Andreas. That's great. Second.
Yes.
Second.
Bob.
Bob, thank you. All in favor? Approved. Thank you. I'm going to suggest that we do our final, just as an out of minutes comment. So I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, Jan. And second, Andreas. That's great. And all in favor?
Yes.
Great. So we're officially finished. Anyone who can stay on the line for 2 minutes, we'll just do our final. Andreas, thank you for your time. We'll catch up over the next couple of days.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. I knew I shouldn't have said at the start of the meeting that I didn't think we'd need the full 3 hours. That I knew that I was going to curse myself when I said it. But anyway, listen, very good conversation today. Lots of good content. Appreciate all of the input. Obviously, a number of key items that we're going to follow up on before the December board meeting. One thing I just want to mention, I briefly mentioned at the top end, we have a couple of things that are coming up in the next couple of months. One is obviously Taylor's departure. And so we want to properly acknowledge that. Of course, we won't be able to do that in person. We also want to welcome our new general manager at the appropriate time. So what we had thought is that we would consider to maybe have a virtual online holiday reception. We don't have a date in mind yet. We've asked the staff to go away, and I think there's a small group just working on that. So I'll just let everyone know that that's what we're thinking about sometime in December. And we'll keep you posted. And yeah, thanks everybody for your time. It's exactly 12:15, so I want to let everyone go at this point.
Thank you, Mike.
If you have any follow-up items, feel free to email myself or Jan, and we'll follow up. And Taylor, I'll follow up with you towards the end of the week as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.